Salim. We're starting the recording. Okay, I'm gonna get started. Welcome everybody to the inaugural TitanTalks performance. We've all been working very hard. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you guys and getting to get everybody prepared for this moment. It's been 4 weeks of preparation and now we're in the grand finale show. We will be doing this program also at the start of next semester. So if you enjoyed the program or if you enjoy watching the speeches, then please join us or recommend it to friends or do it again if you want to talk about something else. So I would like to just let you all know that we do have a raffle. We have 5 gift cards that we're going to be raffling at the end of the performance today. So we hope that you stick around for that once everybody is relieved from, the stress of not having to give their presentation. So we'll have a nice relaxation moment at the end. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Virgie, who's going to say a few words before our show starts. So Ms. Virgie.
Hi, everybody. You could please, Mark, call me Julie. I am thrilled to welcome you all to this exciting event. I am a TED Talk aficionado. Love, love, love them. Have been fortunate enough to attend some for real, live, and it's exhilarating and it definitely feeds the soul. And when I found out that this amazing group was coming together to do it at Cal State Fullerton, what could be better than 2 of my best things put together? If we had chocolate or wine, it might do a little bit more, but I don't think so. I love seeing all your faces and I know you've worked hard, and with hard work comes great gratification and of course great success. So I wish you all great success today, and I can hang out for a little while before I go Zoom somewhere else. But it's great to see the support from 2 of my good friends, which is Miss Gwen and Melissa Smith. And so thanks for just being so supportive. And I thank all the students for having a passion for learning continuously. And I think that's what makes everybody so wonderful, is we strive to be lifelong learners. And this is kind of the best nugget of all of that. So congratulations. Ready, set, go, everybody. This is going to be great.
Cool. Thank you so much, Julie. Okay, so we're going to just dive right in. And our first speaker is Alexander Santana.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me good. So today I want to be presenting a speech that is titled In the Threshold, and this is a transition between military back to civilian life. For anyone who ever joins the military, the first set of orders that person will receive, it's a set of orders to go to boot camp or basic training, whichever way you know it. To put it into perspective, the goal of basic training or boot camp, it is to break the military and to break the civilian and make you a military person. Upon completion of this program, the person will be able to proudly represent the armed forces of the United States of America and proudly wear the uniform of whichever branch of service that person decided to join in. But most importantly, that person will be able to follow the orders of those in the chain of command without any hesitations. I grew up in a Catholic family. I knew since I was a little that I wanted to join the priesthood. That was my calling. I wanted to become a priest. Once I joined the seminary, it was through prayer and meditation that I grew up in my faith. Then 3 years later, I got out of the seminary, and a few years more, I got married, and then September 11 happened. And this event just impacted me so deeply that I could not just sit around and not do anything. So I decided to join the military, and I joined the Navy. I found myself attached to a highly deployable tactical unit that sooner than later, I was headed to the Middle East in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. We landed in an undisclosed remote location in the middle of the night. Once the ramp of the airplane touched the ground, we were instructed to gear up and form a single line and quickly disembark and board a bus that was waiting for us. I couldn't help but to notice the extreme military presence and the safety precautions that we were taking. I noticed it on the military tanks that were blocking every single intersection as the convoy started to move. And all this while the military helicopter was hovering above us. That was a moment of realization for me that this was no seminary in life anymore. This was war, and I had to adapt. So as a coping mechanism, I immediately became guarded, hypervigilant. This adrenaline kicked in and I just became hypervigilant 24/7. And this lasted for the duration of the deployment. I had to numb my feelings and beliefs in order to protect the mission. And if I wanted to come back home alive, I had to be guarded. I had to be hypervigilant. So flying back home, it was a time that I have allotted to find the switch inside me and turn it off. And all this hypervigilance mode and everything, it was going to be turned off. But I forgot one thing. No one ever told me that that was an option. I forgot to install an off switch in my head. So I couldn't find it. And I realized that as a very thick mental cloud took over me, and all these emotions that I was suppressing wanted to come back alive as we landed at Coronado Naval Base. And all I remember, it was shaking hands of high military officials, and then boom, my mother was in there, was hugging me. My then wife was hugging me. And all this while the national television cameras were right in my face, trying to capture every single drop of tear that it was coming out of my eyes to see the emotions. Those emotions that I was so much trying to contain, right? So I got what it's called the 30 seconds of fame, being on national television and coming back and the heroes and everybody cheering. But the moment of truth came when I stood in the threshold of my home, and the threshold of my door, and I opened the door and I found the spiritual person that I have left behind, the civilian person, that literally immediately stopped me and say, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm the military that is coming back." No, you're the one who actually removed God from the top priority, and you allow the government to take position to replace the God. You allow the government to dictate what you were going to do and what it was important of you. And I was like, no. So I started having all this anxiety, this first signs of PTSD, these nightmares and these night sweats and everything. And I started, as I look around, I noticed my family and my siblings and my family and my friends and everybody took a quick, silent stand. Like no one would dare to say anything. They were quick to judge me and say, "Oh, he just came back from war. He's not all there. He's not doing well." But no one will say anything because they didn't know how to help me. So I run to the VA looking for help. And all I got was a prescription of antidepressants. And they said, "Here, if within 2 to 3 weeks you don't feel better, come back and we'll double the dosage." My purpose on this is to bring awareness to you, the civilian person, and to the military culture. This is a real tangible problem that we have. This is a real issue that we have. And if we continue to ignore and to deny that this issue exists among us, 22 more veterans will commit suicide today because we don't have a system in place that will allow us as civilians to educate ourselves and to be able to help and provide the safe return home to our veterans. So my plea is for you guys to please get involved. If you see a veteran coming back and struggling, don't just stay in there and be quiet. Try to help, educate yourself, and become involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. And thank you for your service also.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move on to Ombeline Armand.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So today I would like to talk to you about a word, a really important word to me, and which I believe could be for you: courage. I would like for you to take a second to think of the word courage and what it means to you. Because I feel many of us have misconception of courage. Many of us think it's something we have and not something we learn. We feel someone is courageous, but we cannot really learn courage. For me, it directly relates to the idea of no regret. I believe if you have courage, you will do it and will be one day looking back at your life and have no regret. You will be happy of what happened. So let me tell you a little life story. I grew up in France and spent my teenagers year looking at the US and being a US TV show, such as One Tree Hill or The OC, and being obsessed with their life. You know what I envy the most? It's the locker that most of you had in high school. I thought it was so cool. So what I did is I made my mom go to IKEA and buy me a fake locker, and which became my storage in my room. For me, it was a step closer to that dream I had. It was closer to that life I was seeing on TV. While I was putting my books in my locker, pretending I was in a US high school, I asked my mom, I looked at my mother and I told her, Mom, I'm going to go to America. I'm going to study in America. And as a good mother, she smiled and told me, yes, honey, one day when you will be older. So I asked her, what is old enough? She just thought on top of her head, didn't really thinking. And she told me 15 years old. So what do you think I did at 15? I did come up with an application all filled out in advance and told my mom to sign it. When she asked me what it was for, I told her it was an application to go in a program to learn English and go to Los Angeles for a month because I was finally 15. So you might wonder, where is the courage in all that? Why did we talk about courage? It's just that trip aroused my love for international. So you fast forward a few years, it's July 2012. I'm 18 years old. I just graduated high school 3 days before, and I'm in the airport in Paris. My luggage is overweight, and so the steward at the counter tell me I'm gonna have to pay extra fee. And I just start crying. He didn't know what to do. And I was just looking back at my parents that were standing out there. And so I told him, half crying, that I was leaving to live by myself in Costa Rica for 6 months. I have talked about that moment of being 18, going on my own, go explore the world. But now that I was there, I was terrified. I could not stop crying. And I was just wondering, why am I living this perfect life, that bubble I created, my family? So, you know, it takes courage to make any decision. It takes courage to decide to start studying. It takes courage to live across the world. And even it takes courage to talk in front of everyone today. I want to fast forward 8 years. It's November 13, 2020, and I've been living in America for 6 years. Yes, Mom, I made it. I study in America. I did my bachelor and now I'm doing my MBA program in the US. So see, Mom, dream comes true. You just need courage to go for it and look back and have never, ever regrets. I wanted to talk about this word today because it matters to me so much that if I did not have this courage along the years, I would have never accomplished everything I have done. But I want to bring one point. I think there's no big or small courage. It is courageous, yes, to live across the world, but it will take the same courage for someone to take this workshop and talk in front of this camera to a lot of unknown people. So one thing, let's be courageous. Let's take on the world, take on any opportunities. Do not regret life and be adventurous. And most of all, do the scariest thing in life because it will always be worth it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to Daniel Bustamante. Daniel, if you're there, we cannot hear you.
Hi.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Forgot.
Okay.
turn on video, forgot to unmute.
You're good.
So, anyways, so hi everyone. So my topic today is going to be on math and like why I think that the way it's being taught right now in like school isn't like really helpful to what a person like studying math will actually do. So a little background is that I'm a math major and I really enjoy it and I want other people to like see what I see in it. So I think that there really isn't like a math person per se, because most people think that a math person is just a person that's like can do these calculations really, really fast, like they finish the test first and everyone else is like halfway through, like what happened there? That's not really what happens, right? And that's not a math person. That's just a person that could follow step by step processes really fast. So I want to go through my experience like from elementary to high school. So like starting off in second grade, we had like 5-minute quizzes on like little problem sets that if we got them all right, we would move on. It was like a progression thing, right? So I first started off with like adding small numbers, adding big numbers. Then it was like a full, like double the amount of questions, and then subtraction, multiplication, division. Like I finished all of that before people even got halfway through. Like everyone else just started looking at me like, wow, this person is just a math person, right? And that boosted my confidence. I'm not gonna lie, it really did. But then I started realizing that like other people were kind of getting discouraged from math, right? Because they were like, oh, I can't do it as fast as this person. Like, why am I just bad at it or stuff like that? I'm like, no, in my mind, just looking back now, it's just that they think that being a math person was just like being able to do these calculations really fast, just memorize stuff like that. And then I think that carried on to like when I looked at people studying algebras, it's very formulaic, step by step process. It's like subtract 5 on both sides, divide by 2, x equals 3. It's like, okay, anyone can do that. Just little memorization, just remember the steps, but like anyone can do that. So now it's just a test of how fast are you at it, right? That doesn't really help you. That's not math. Like going on to my 10th grade year and sophomore year, pre-calc honors, like it was a notoriously hard class for people, right? I aced the first test, 96, class average was below a B. Next test, I bombed it. I got a 76, which isn't really bombing, but that was my first C ever in all my years of high school, like taking math tests. And like people are just like, wow, like was it really that hard? I'm like, it wasn't hard. It just tested you on what math should be because it was all word problems. It was all read a problem and then try to solve it yourself. It was you need to make the connections of like, oh yeah, these two things are related. Okay, so you use this equation and that equation, and then you do the solving the step parts. Like I just couldn't do that. It was really hard for me. And then that carried on into my last 2 years of high school, where it's just like these math classes were like extremely hard, but the topics were kind of easy. The main part was just like getting it done. Like we had so much trouble just finding out the first step, right? And then like that like really goes into my last year where I was in a period. It was my class period was split into 2 different classes just because there wasn't enough people in each section to make a full class. And like my teacher, bless her heart, actually managed to do it for us. And what ended up happening for us is that we were separated and looked at less often than the other side because our teacher had faith in us. Like she believed that we could actually get through this stuff. And what we ended up doing was that we just talked amongst each other. And it's just like, that's what math is, right? Talking around with each other, looking at different ideas and seeing what's happening. Because what we ended up doing is that we had a lot of trouble with different like materials, but we just talked. Someone said, oh yeah, I remember this part from like last year. I remember this other thing, right? We just piece it all together and now we have an answer, right? That's how most of the days went, just because our time was split between the 2 classes. But that made me like fall in love with math even more, just because that's like what I think it really is. Because people are saying that like math is like, oh, they're just critical thinkers, like it's meant to make you critical thinker, make you good at logic and stuff like that. But that's not really what it's doing. It's making you good at following a process, right? Math should be talking with each other, figuring out stuff, build upon what you already know, communicate, getting you information, right? So like I want to leave you with this great analogy I thought of like the other day, is that let's say you walk into a store, right, looking for like let's say tomato sauce, and only then aisles are numbered. It doesn't tell you any description, right? You walk in, it's a brand new store. Like the way math taught is right now, it's like you'd go there, you'd be like, okay, so if I just keep going down each aisle, I'll eventually find it. And like, yeah, that's a solution. That's just the process. Like anyone can do that, right? But like a real like critical thinker or like a communicator, like a math person would just be like, oh yeah, let's just go to this employee. They can be like, oh yeah, it's in aisle 5, 2/3 down to your left. It's not really that bad. I think that's what we actually should do, because the school system right now is just tending more towards let's just do process by process by process instead of critical thinking, communication skills, and everything that it really should be. And that's all.
Thank you, Daniel. We're now going to, or I'll introduce Matthew Nickel for his presentation.
Hello, everyone. You guys hear me okay? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Awesome, awesome. So first of all, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Now, in the fall of 2018, I was promoted to the section leader of the El Dorado High School drumline based in Placentia, California. As a member of the drumline, we practiced 5 days a week, sometimes 4 to 5 hours a day, plus an additional practice whenever we had a show coming up the following week. On a typical Wednesday evening, after a grueling and exhausting rehearsal, we started to pack up for the night. Honestly, it was not one of our best practices. It was one of the hottest days of the week. We had a show coming up the next week. It was our members were struggling with our music. So needless to say, our instructor and professor really got on us that day, particularly myself and 2 other members of my section. So after we finished putting everything away, I pulled everyone together for a quick meeting to talk about what happened. There we talked about the day's practice and what we could do from now until the next practice to make sure that this never happens again. And as I addressed the 2 other members who got really grilled that day, one of them, out of nowhere, just ran out of the room. Everyone, including myself, wondered what was going on. So after I sent the rest of the drumline home, I ran out to try and find out where she went, but she was nowhere to be seen. Just then, 2 of her really close friends approached me, named Adrian and Jacob, and told me something that I would never forget. They told me that Lady, her name is Lady, that she had been struggling with depression and she was sadly thinking about taking her own life. Fearing for her life and for what she might do if she was alone, the 3 of us searched the entire campus trying to find her. The entire time thinking to myself, please just let me find her. Thankfully, Jacob called Adrian and I saying that he found her sitting in the middle of the baseball field across campus. So quickly, Adrian and I ran as hard as we could to get there just to see if she was all right. Once we got there, Adrian told me to hang back a bit as him and Jacob had been Lady's friends for years and may be able to talk with her, and me trying to help might make her run away or might make her uncomfortable. So just thankful that we found her. I agreed to lay back for a little bit. Thankful just that we found her. Those 10 to 15 minutes of just listening to her sobbing and explaining to Adrian and Jacob why she was depressed was one of the most hardest and most absolutely heartbreaking things I've ever experienced. I thought to myself, as her leader, as her mentor, her friend, how can I have been so blind to what was going on in her life? It was soul crushing to think that she was going through all of this on her own and none of us ever knew. And all I wanted to do was run out to the field and give her the biggest hug possible and tell her that everything is okay and that we love her so much and that we care for her. By that time, Lady started to relax, and Adrian and Jacob started to walk her back to the band room where we were all talking before. I followed closely behind, and by the time we both met up back in the band room, her and I ran towards each other, and I gave her the biggest hug possible. And I told her that I'm always here for her no matter what. Her and I cried together, and she told me a little bit of what she already told Jacob and Adrian previously about why she was depressed. I couldn't help getting emotional while listening to her talk about her family and all the other things that pushed her to this level. The four of us talked for hours and hours that evening and wanted to talk longer, but as it got into midnight, 1 in the morning, we all decided to call it. Jacob offered to drive her to a friend's house to spend the night, which we all agreed was the best option for her, and we all parted ways that evening. Sadly, this is only one of the many, many stories about depression, mental health, and suicide in our world today. According to the World Health Organization in January of 2020, over 264 million people of all ages suffer from depression. 264 million people. And this is back in January. With COVID-19, racial and social injustice, and general disunity of people in our society today, think about where that number might be now. Depression and suicide prevention have been discussed for years upon years now, yet it is still very relevant in our world today. You never know what someone could be going through on a daily basis. When you talk with someone in your community, at school, at your job, whatever it is, that person could be going through the worst thing imaginable, and you would never know about it. But what if that person was someone you knew? What if that was a friend, a colleague, a loved one? What if it was you? Would you want everyone else to just carry on their day like nothing ever happened? No, because no one should be struggling through this on their own. That's why all of us need to do one thing that is just so difficult in our society today, is just listen. Listen to what your friend is telling you, your family, another student at school, your faculty, someone you just met on the street. Just listen. Because that could mean the absolute world to someone who's struggling through depression, mental health, or even suicide. And you could prevent all of that simply by listening to them and treating them the same way that you would want to be treated in return. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm now going to introduce Jennifer Montgomery. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and thank you for giving me this opportunity. So my speech is titled, Learning to Move Forward by Finally Looking Back. When I was very young, my mother was diagnosed with leukemia. I don't remember exactly when she got diagnosed or when we started making after-school trips to different hospitals, but I remember not understanding the severity of our situation and thinking that she was going to get better. It wasn't until the last few months when my mother would come home with far less hair and she could no longer climb the stairs to her room that I understood that I might lose my mom. Then at the age of 11, she passed away. My mom was patient, kind, and if you asked anyone who had met her what they remember most about her, they'd all tell you it was her smile. As a mother, she led by example and remembered and also acted as a mediator between my father and I, who had vastly different personalities. In her absence, we both struggled deeply to communicate with one another about our grief. Neither of us really talked about it. And according to Pew Research, published on a study on December 19, 2019, in which they found that the US has the world's highest rate of children living in single-parent households, with almost a quarter of US children under the age of 18 living with a single parent. My father had to work 2 jobs to pay off the debt that was left from the medical bills, often leaving before I woke up and coming home after I was asleep. Together, we dealt with poverty, a toxic remarriage, and mental illness. This period was one of the hardest periods in both of our lives. And yet, we both mostly went through it alone. This was also one of the greatest learning periods in our life. We just didn't know it yet. There are 2 main lessons that I have learned from this period in my life. The first lesson is that we need to shift the focus from moving on to healing. You need to move on. How many times have you heard that statement offered to you as helpful advice in either grief, a breakup, or any other situation? Now ask yourself, how many times did this phrase actually help? Not giving people the appropriate time they need to grieve can be extremely harmful, causing people to stop seeking support from others. And for years, I tried to just move on, to focus on looking ahead. I thought that by smiling, people would stop asking me how I was doing. And I figured that once the question stopped, I would finally feel better. The interesting part about this is that we don't treat physical pain this way. We don't suggest that someone with an obvious physical ailment to simply move on. A broken arm doesn't heal if you simply forget about it. Likewise, a broken heart doesn't heal by pretending it isn't broken. We need to be about it. We need to be open to those who are hurting. And some people need to cry, some people need to talk, and perhaps some just need to process it alone. But it doesn't stop there. We with the broken hearts must also be willing to seek help and be open and vulnerable and transparent with our needs. We must put in the work for our own healing. For those families who have just lost a provider, it may seem like you don't have the extra time or money to seek help. Professional therapy and counseling is costly, but they're not the only options. Simply connecting with those in the family who are going through the same grief is a completely free and time-effective way to seek emotional and mental help during these times. But this can be easier said than done, especially for fathers in the household. This brings us to the second lesson. We need to make it okay for men to care about their well-being. When my father was only 13 years old, his father walked out on his family, leaving behind 7 children and a single mother. As the oldest child, he took on the role of making sure that his family had food on the table and clothes on their back. Later in his life, when confronted with his wife's death, he sought to deal with it the only way he knew how. He worked tirelessly to make sure that we had food on the table and that I had clothes on my back. Similarly, many other men grow up learning that their roles in the family is tied to the physical resources that they bring to the table. For a parent, losing your spouse means losing the one who knew your deepest secrets and the one who you can turn to at your darkest moments. Except this is your darkest moments and they aren't there. A study found by the Journal of Gerontology found that widowhood appears to be a more depressing experience for men than for women, largely due to factors such as lack of social support. As I found during research for this talk, finding groups that listed facts, statistics, or were specifically for single fathers was like pulling teeth, with most information coming from blogs or articles that provided analogical support. Men need better accessibility to these spaces in order to address all these changes in their lives. As I saw my dad deal with grief by himself, I also began to internalize the notion that these feelings had to be dealt with alone. And it wasn't until I met with my husband and my high school sweetheart that I was introduced to another option. Robert was really wise for his age. Don't get me wrong, he was still a dumb teen boy who once chugged a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew just for laughs. But he was also highly empathetic, and he took on the role of mediator between my dad and me. He taught us that the value of being vulnerable, transparent, and being open to communication. Not every argument ended on a good, happy note, but the relationship that I have now with my dad is something I never would have imagined years ago. When you're grieving, sometimes communicating those feelings into words is the last thing you want to do. And we need to prioritize our mental and emotional health in order to heal. At the end of the day, we need to get to know ourselves and each other better. Like fine china that's been mended, things will never be exactly the same again. But that's okay. Grief is messy. During the years that followed, my dad began to be more open to talking about his frustrations, his worries, and the pains that he felt. It's not common in Latinx culture for men to show their vulnerable sides, and it takes a lot of work to unlearn that. He challenged his outlook on life with different perspectives of what truly gives people happiness. He changed the changes he made with himself influenced the relationship that we had. My father learned that it's okay to not know what to do. And together, but on our own accord, we ended up learning to move forward by finally looking back. For the longest time, I wished that things would have ended differently. But through these hardships, I've grown to be the person I am today, someone who would make my mother proud. Our lives have not been easy, and we know the future won't be either. But echoing C.S. Lewis, hardships often prepare an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny. And that is, without a doubt, where we're heading. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm now going to show a pre-recorded video for Johnny Sevilla, who was not able to come to the event. So I'm going to start the video, and please, if you guys could just let me know, like with a thumbs up. Let me know with a thumbs up if you can hear the recording. So I'm going to share my screen.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to my Titan Talk. My name is Johnny Sevilla, and I'm currently a graduate student at the Fullerton College of Business and Economics. Every year, roughly 2/3 of all high school students continue their path of education to earn a bachelor's.
Okay, just one second. I think it's because I had it. I'll just go back a little bit.
Roughly 2/3 of all high school students continue their path of education to earn a bachelor's degree. Over the course of 4 years, these collegiate students will accumulate roughly $30,000 in student loan debts. Today, I'd like to share my experience and my currently being in a master's program, have accumulating no student loans at any point in my college career. Now, let me preface this and say that I'm not a student athlete that went to school on a full ride, nor am I the super genius that went to school for a full ride based solely on my merit and my studies. I'm just a regular college student that found a path that worked for me. My journey started as early as 17 years old, and it's still continuing as I'm approaching my 23rd birthday. Now, when I graduated high school, I didn't rush into going to a state school. Rather, I made the conscious decision to go to Saddleback Community College, and I went there primarily just because it was a more affordable education. But my time at Saddleback actually taught me that it was not only more affordable, but that I received the same education that I would receive at a state school in any undergrad program. Through Saddleback, I applied for the FAFSA and the Board of Governors waiver, which waived my tuition fees at Saddleback, while the FAFSA actually granted me money for books and supplies while attending Saddleback College. Now, backtracking a little bit, in my senior year of high school, I started working for Starbucks. And I didn't know much about Starbucks at that time other than they just sold coffee. And what I would find is that they would actually take very, very good care of their employees. And Starbucks would go on to provide me many benefits. But the most important one would be the Starbucks College Achievement Program, which they refer to as the SCAP program. And the program would provide Starbucks employees with full tuition reimbursement for online classes at Arizona State University, provided that that employee worked there 20 hours a week. Now, at the time, I was already working there 20 hours a week, so it was a no-brainer for me to get the rest of my education at Arizona State University. Now, with this program, combined with Saddleback, at that point, I had already received a bachelor's degree without taking out $1 in student loans, and I was 22 years old. Now, backtracking a little bit more, after my first year of Saddleback, into my second year of Saddleback, I made the conscious decision to join the Army National Guard. Now, I always wanted to serve my country, but I always wanted to work in the private sector as well. So I really didn't want to commit to active duty. So I decided to join the Army National Guard. I felt like it worked for me, the part-time guard, and go to school and kind of combine the both. Now, one of my goals in the Army National Guard was to commission as an officer. And one of those ways to commission as an officer is to go to officer candidate school. But in order to go to officer candidate school, you have to have a bachelor's degree. Now, my original plan was go to officer candidate school, or OCS as they call it. So my plan was go to OCS and commissioned as an officer after finishing the Arizona State program. And it sounds pretty simple, right? You know, you're able to get your bachelor's degree, no student loans, and commissioned as an officer in the Army National Guard. However, these plans changed one day when I found out about the ROTC program at Fullerton. And after contacting the recruiting operations officer here at Fullerton, they were actually able to get me a guaranteed reserve forces duty scholarship, which actually provided me full tuition for my MBA, a cadet stipend, provided that I complete the ROTC program, and I commissioned as an officer in the Army National Guard, and I served 8 years as an officer in the Army National Guard, minimum. Now, to me, this was a win-win because I already wanted to serve in the Army National Guard as an officer anyways, so the time limit didn't really matter to me. Now, this would actually help further my education path, as well as putting me on a path to commissioning as an officer in the Army National Guard and getting my tuition paid for. Now, my college degree and my college journey has been one of twists and turns, but I always kept pushing forward. I have found that in life, as long as you're able to have a goal and stick to it, that the rest will fall into place, essentially. All of the components individually helped me achieve the overall goal that I was able to take away and go to school for free. However, it's the journey that I took to achieve them that I hope you're able to take away. I want my story to serve not as one as just talking about myself, but one to serve as optimism that shows that, you know, in these trying times, that it is possible to go to school at a free and reduced cost, providing you're willing to sacrifice something, whether it's sleep, energy, time, effort, anything other than money. You know, there's other things that you could sacrifice in order to go to school for that reduced monetary rate. Now, I'm not advocating for you to take the same path I did, but instead taking the time to find a path that works for you. At the end of your journey, you could be the best version of yourself. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So now we are going to move on to Chandra Toy.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. So if you want to adjust your screen so that you can see speaker view too, it's a split screen. And we'll dive in here. All right, so my speech today is on freedom of speech, a discourse in daily life. And I have a question for you. What do Socrates and Jesus have in common? And the answer is, besides being historical figures, they also were very passionate about sharing ideas. So they were willing to die rather than stop sharing those ideas, which brings to mind a quote from Evelyn Beatrice Hall, who said, "I may disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Now, the First Amendment is our law that covers our freedom of speech. Now, there's some exceptions to that: perjury, defamation, to name a few, and incitement to illegal actions, such as you can't scream fire in a theater and have everybody stampede out and people get hurt trying to get to the exit. Lately, though, I've noticed on social media that if you disagree or share an idea or try to explore something in a different way, you get unfriended, unfollowed, deplatformed. Cancel culture is what I would like to talk about today, because I think it threatens our very discourse and our First Amendment right. So to start with, I'm going to share a movie that I found groundbreaking. It was on Netflix, called The Social Dilemma. And it's a parade of tech, engineers, ethicists, and educators. And specifically, I want to share a quote that was about 50 minutes in by Justin Rosenstein. And Justin said, and then you look over at the other side and you start to think, how can those people be so stupid? Look at all of this information that I'm constantly seeing, and how are they not seeing that same information? The answer is they're not seeing that same information, said Justin. We have to remember that social is not in the business of news. They're in the business of keeping us watching the screen. How do they do that? Well, sensation sells. And just like we'll slow down to watch a car wreck on the freeway, so does a sensational post. And with every like and every share, we build echo chambers. So what's the result? Well, they had this to share too, with some pure research illustrating the political polarization. If we look at this chart, the Republicans and Democrats were very close together. And if you look at it over time, they track together till 2008. And then in 2017, we find ourselves here, extremely divided. And let me toggle that back and forth for a second so you can see it. It's pretty profound. So why 2008? Well, that's when social media became much more mainstream, with mobile devices becoming prolific, and the whole thing took off. So a couple of questions I have to ask. First, does this drive the polarization, or are we just reflecting it? I think even in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica story, it might be a little bit of both. And if you're not familiar with Cambridge Analytica, you should watch The Great Hack on Netflix too. That's very good. The second question I have to ask is, what happens if we don't fix it? Do we just scream louder from our own echo chambers? Or do we do the work that it takes to foster communication? The last question I have is, how did we get here to begin with? And for that, I have to go into a little bit of history. You see, I work in print. And that Gutenberg press in that top left corner you see there, that was a sign of freedom. Because it was the first time, besides manually copying manuscripts, that we can mass produce something and distribute it for the public to see. And today, we have 4-story printing presses that spit out newspapers like crazy. And these trusted news sources are going out of business. Why? Because it sells. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, when sensation sells and you don't have to be a journalist at a big newspaper to publish a story, that's not awful. It means that you can have more journalistic information coming straight from the streets. But we have to be careful about what we consume. And this story is particularly personal for me because I have a daughter who's 20 years old, and she was very passionate about a lot of the political unrest going on and the things with George Floyd's death. And she posted this all cops are bastards post, and it was, you know, polarizing. And I have a family of 5 law enforcement, so you can imagine how that went over. It's not always easy to tell what real news is. I mean, it used to be. You used to be able to see Lloyd's and then the New York Times, but it's harder now, you know? Technology's moving fast. And today, you know, a week's worth of the New York Times is more than people used to see in their entire lifetime in the 18th century. 1992 is the day the first text was sent, and today we send more texts daily than there is population on the planet. So it's harder and harder to tell the difference. So how do we do this? Well, we have to ask, is this opening dialogue or is it shutting it down? And sometimes that's still hard to tell. So maybe taking a class with media studies or propaganda to help find that difference. Media literacy is something that I believe needs to happen early, 5th grade, maybe earlier. I remember in 6th grade clipping newspaper articles and taking them in to discuss with the class. With social media, it's a half-inch deep. How much can you shove into a meme or a character count for Twitter? It's hard to have good conversations when all you've got is headlines. And the challenge that I see is that we have to talk about it. The very definition of politically incorrect is that you're going to offend somebody with this discussion, this idea that you want to talk about. And so many of the today are controversial. They're controversial because they're messy. And we have to talk through them because that's how you get a path forward. That's how you draft legislation. That's how you build laws and find a way forward. So here's a couple of tips on how to foster discourse at your Thanksgiving dinner table this year. First, nothing is ever black and white. It's always a gray area, especially if it's a controversial topic. For example, abortion. How many different areas does that affect? It affects education, fiscal policy, insurance, healthcare, religion, family values, biology, philosophy, social issues, economic issues, and human rights. You see, we tend to think in black and white, but this gray area is about the system that it's a. So get curious and think in systems. Try to look at things from a different perspective. The next tip I've got is try to listen and understand. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them proportionally. And I have to go back to my favorite books, Getting to Yes by Robert Fisher and William Ury, who said we should be concerned with interests, not positions. And as an example, I have friends who are Republican, and all they want is for their small business to thrive, to survive, to not be burdened with taxes and bureaucracy. I also have friends who are Democrats, and they are really concerned about human rights. There's no reason those things have to be mutually exclusive. We can have both. And that was the point that Robert Fisher and William Ury tried to get to in their negotiating book, Getting to Yes. So listen, seek to understand. Maybe we can find a way forward with both. And the third point is agree to disagree with respect. Marriage and family counselors have been talking for years about how respect is a cornerstone with any relationship. And it's a sure sign that if it's missing, that you're headed for a divorce. And in a world of us versus them, who are those them anyway? Besides your neighbors, your family, your coworkers. United we stand, or divided, what's the alternative? Violence, crosses, the hemlock? In closing, I hope that this has expanded your thoughts about discourse, getting outside of your echo chambers, being curious and trying to understand respectfully another side to the story, because we the people, every single one of us needs to be heard for this great country and our democracy to work. Thank you for the time today. And if you'd like a copy of the slides, text freedom to 22454 and I'd be happy to send you a copy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We're now going to move on to Michelle Mehta.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. My name is Michelle Mehta, and I am a teen confidence expert. How many of you have thoughts inside of your head? What are these thoughts telling you? Are they negative? Are they positive? Or are they neutral? Today, I would like to talk to you about these thoughts and what effect does it have on an individual. A year ago, I had the opportunity to do a presentation in front of a middle school, 100 students at my old middle school. These were 6th, 7th, and 8th graders between the ages of 11 to 14. And I asked them this very question. How many of you have evil thoughts inside of your head? Every single hand went up. That is only 100 hands out of 100 kids. Can you imagine? I was shocked to see that. And I asked them a follow-up question. What are these thoughts telling you? Their responses were even more shocking. I'm not smart. I am stupid. I'm overweight. I'm not loved. These kids are 11 to 14 years old. Where are these thoughts coming from? Do they even know the definition of being overweight? Do they even know the definition between being smart and stupid? Well, these thoughts are fed. They're fed from the adults in their lives because we adults talk like that sometimes about ourselves. And not to mention, in the next 24 hours, 1,400 teenagers in the United States will attempt suicide. 1,400 teenagers in the next 24 hours in the United States will attempt suicide. Why on earth would these teenagers attempt suicide? It's because these negative thoughts are killing them. These negative thoughts have taken over. These I'm not stupid, I'm not smart, I'm an idiot, I'm overweight. It's killing them every single day. Today, I would like to share with you 4 different quotients in our society. Number 1 is emotional quotient. How emotionally attuned are you? How emotionally aware are you? What are your emotions telling you on a day-to-day basis? Second is an intelligent quotient. How intelligent are you? Are you able to do the things that you need to do? Because we all know not everything is rocket science, not everything is brain surgery, yet we sell ourselves short. So how intelligent are we? Third is our societal quotient. Who is in our network? Who do we hang out with? Are they a good influence? Are they a bad influence? Or they have no influence at all? And the fourth one, which is the most important in my opinion, is the adversity quotient, which is allowing you to do the task every single day without fail, which allows you to have that never give up attitude, which allows you to not think about suicide. Where is your adversity quotient? You see, in our lives, we have situations. Some we can tackle like it's no big deal, such as brushing our teeth, it's a no-brainer. Taking a shower is a no-brainer. There are some tasks that we've talked about today, which is such as math and doing calculus, which is beyond, if you don't know it, you won't know it type scenario. In scenarios that are like that, many people, teenagers and adults, are resorting to, I'd rather just kill myself and not worry about it. They give up. And they give up because they're not strong enough. Because these thoughts inside of their heads have taken over. So how do you let go of these thoughts? How do you become empowered? How do you become strong? There are 3 strategies. Number 1, get in a state of gratitude. We hear gratitude a lot. It's like the most common word right now, but really understand at a core level. Gratitude is being grateful for the things that you have. Worrying about things that are half glass, half empty, like half full glass, not a half empty glass. Things that you already own, such as being on Zoom, being connected. The smallest things, having running water. That is a state of gratitude, being appreciative. Number 2, rewrite your story with your soul in mind. What does that mean? Our soul is what keeps us alive. And those sentences start with I am. You see, when we say I am stupid, you're also telling your soul that it doesn't matter, it's stupid. Versus saying, I am confident. I am strong. I have what it takes. I will not give up. You see, when you start sentences with I and you start with I am, you're allowing yourself to appreciate that. You're allowing yourself to see that, you know what, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because every single day is an opportunity to rewrite your story. Every single moment is an opportunity to rewrite your thought. You are in full control. Allow yourself to be in control with the sentences I am. And the last one is trust your gut. We talk about gut feeling, we talk about intuition a lot. What is that? There is thoughts that are coming from our stomach, coming from our heart, that is not necessarily not coming from our head. Allow your body to say, give you signs. Trust your body to communicate with you. So when you are in a state of gratitude, you have empowering statements starting with I am, and you trust your gut, nothing can defeat you. Nothing can stop you, and allows you to be the most truest version of yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to Leah Yagan.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the other speakers and for everyone for being here, as well as this opportunity. So within the first few seconds you saw my face, your brain created a preconceived judgment of who I am, or simply what kind of person you think I am, even without knowing anything about me. As do I when I speak to you. First impressions are important. First impressions are frequently overgeneralized as or skim too briefly, often misinterpreted as only an experience relating to an interview or meeting with someone with an authority like a director or a boss. I want to encourage you to think of first impressions as any first encounter with another person. Put the same level of value and connection with people as you do when you shake the hand of your new boss for the first time. The significance of upholding their value is that you are also valuing yourself. Many times people wouldn't think twice about how they approach someone, but maybe we should. I don't mean to put up a facade just so that your coworker or your biolab partner will like you, but to just be you. A friend of mine once said, imagine if we could be vulnerable with one another, where vulnerability didn't have to always mean fully opening yourself up or sharing your deepest secrets. It's just being your honest, true self. I've attended 15 different schools, including the one I'm currently at. I've also never stayed in one apartment for more than 2 years, moving at an eager pace. Every time I met someone in a new city or school, I had to reintroduce myself. Each time I did, it was something completely different. I framed what I would say based on what I assumed about my audience's interest. I let my first impression mimic the personality of the people I was talking to. At first, I found it unique to myself, until I noticed that much of what I was saying was something I didn't quite fully identify with anymore or at all. I just thought of whatever I could to make sure that the conversation wouldn't feel awkward. I thought to myself, I might never see this person again, so why does it matter? But that is exactly why first impressions matter. We don't know if we will ever see each other again. Right here, right now, in this moment, we don't know. So what are you going to leave people thinking about when you walk away? It's about what part of yourself you're willing to share. Now, this doesn't disregard the bad or the lazy days where you don't feel like wearing fully ironed clothes or combing your hair, or when you feel emotionally imbalanced and you don't have the words to comprehend or even express it. Ultimately, I don't want to make you overthink about how you've been introducing yourself, but be mindful. Allow some room to be honest with yourself, with your feelings, your background, your story, and all in all, the intimate relationships or the intimate connections that you make with people. You never know the people you will meet, and you never know the connections you will create. So let others see the confidence that you have in yourself. I assure you, you have nothing to lose by being vulnerable, where it is appropriate to your true character. So let that first encounter have meaning, be purposeful, and be intentional. First impressions are what you make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. That was awesome. We're now going to go to Rebecca Bao. And then after Rebecca, we have Salim, which will be our last presenter. And then we'll go to the raffles. Okay, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to ask the audience this question today. How many of you have texted and drove at least once in your life? And if you have, raise your hand. Don't be shy. I got rear-ended by a teenage woman who was using her phone while she was driving. Even though there are laws to prohibit these actions, many drivers still use their phones and do not think about the consequences that can be fatal. Distracted driving has taken too many lives and injured our loved ones. Edgar Sinder, a law firm, reported that nearly 390,000 injuries occur each year from accidents caused by texting while using your car. The problem of this sort of distraction still exists, and we cannot run away from this issue. Putting your hands on the wheel and pressing the gas pedal while going 60 or more miles per hour itself is dangerous already, and it should be completely focused on without any disturbances. Even when a driver is practicing safe driving, accidents are still prone to happen. Adding diversions you think you can handle can increase the risk of crashing and even death. For example, answering a text takes away your attention for about 5 seconds or more. If you're traveling at 55 miles per hour, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Want to rethink picking up your phone? Distracted driving means the use of a motor vehicle while engaging in another activity, typically one that involves the use of a mobile phone or another electronic device. It can include eating, using GPS, texting, and using your phone. By not mentally, manually, and visually focusing on the road all at once, you are practicing a dangerous activity to you and others. Selfish, right? There are visual distractions, manual distractions, and mental distractions. Visual distractions involves the driver looking away from the roadway, looking at someone walking their dog on the sidewalk, checking yourself in the mirror, and so on. Who stares at a crash scene and then say, ooh, that looks bad. I hope they're okay. And then almost crash yourself because the car in front of you is doing the same thing as you and all of a sudden press the brakes out of nowhere. It is so easy to take your eyes off the road. Manual distraction is when the driver takes his or her hand off the steering wheel to do something. Eating, drinking, and holding a phone are all manual distractions. Although there's no California law that prohibits eating while driving, PBS law mentioned that police can still ticket you for being careless. Mental distraction is when you think about something else instead of focusing on the road. This can include daydreaming and using voice-activated features on your Bluetooth car. Why texting is dangerous is because it practices all three types of distracted driving. Driving is an opportunity to travel long distances, and it is a necessity for many. However, some civilians are taking this mode of transportation for granted by using their phones or having other interferences that hinder their performance. The National Safety Council reports that cell phone use while driving leads to 1.6 million crashes each year. 1 out of every 4 car accidents in the United States is caused by texting. Texting is the most common distracted driving. Drivers are tempted to check notifications on their phone because they do not want to miss anything important. They know the dangers that come with these actions, but they still do it due to multiple reasons. One main reason is that we think we can multitask. A mental bias, right? Carrie Krawick, a licensed marriage and family therapist, explained that many people believe they can multitask without losing efficacy. Research shows that no one can give 100% of their attention to each task. The more tasks that are added on, the more their attention diminishes, but people believe that they are the exception. The cause is attitudinal because it is 100% in the driver's control to use their phone while driving or not. This can be resolved. There are solutions to texting and driving. The penalties should be much higher than a base fine of $20 for the first offense and $50 for the second. Not only should there be a higher fine, but there should also be more consequential penalties, such as revoking a license. Short-term solutions can be to put the phone out of sight while driving. There are apps to download that can automatically shut down the phone when the car is in motion. Another solution is to educate drivers. It is all about self-control and knowing that when you are using a cell phone, you're putting yourself and others at risk of death. Distracted driving needs to stop and should not be a concurring problem in our society when we know people can die from it. If the woman wasn't distracted, I wouldn't have gotten rear-ended in the first place. What will you do today if your phone rings in the car? Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Our final presentation will be Salim Haider.
Thank you for the introduction, Mark. All right. So my name's Salim. I'm going to be giving a 3 to 4 minute speech. It's called an epideictic speech. So it's not a topic that I have direct correlation to, but the focus of the speech is designed to show praise or blame. And I really like the idea of this because I wanted to practice my ability, not just about the content of the writing or the speech, but just to practice my way of speaking. So it is the blessing of a naval vessel. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and general, we are here to celebrate. 6 years of planning and 10 months of labor have gone into building the ship we stand on, and we have made America proud. This destroyer will be the 71st destroyer in the US Navy, made by the people, for the people. This noble vessel will be named after an operations officer, now general, named Eric Johnson. The story behind why is one of comedy. I was once on a US military ship as a major, having breakfast in the wardroom when Johnson walked in. This man was the polar opposite of a morning person. He was still half asleep, bleary-eyed, and basically a zombie with a bagel. He sits down across from me to eat his bagel and is just barely conscious. My back is to the outboard side of the ship, and the morning sun is blazing in one of the portholes, putting a big, bright circle of light right on his barely conscious face. He's squinting and chewing, and basically just remembering how to be alive for today. It's truly painful to watch, but made an interesting sight to accompany my coffee. But then, zombie OPS stops chewing, slowly picks up the phone and dials the bridge. In his well-known, "I'm still totally asleep" voice, he says, "Hey, it's OPS. Could you shift our bar pat? Yeah, 165. Thanks." And puts the phone down. And then he just sits there, squinting, waiting. And then ever so slowly, I realize that the big blazing spot of sun has begun to slide off of the zombie's face and onto the wall behind him. After a moment, it clears his face and he blinks slowly a few times, and the brilliant beauty of what I've just witnessed begins to overwhelm me. By ordering the bridge to adjust the ship's back and forth patrol by about 15 degrees, he has changed our course just enough to reposition the sun off of his face. He's literally just redirected thousands of tons of steel and hundreds of people so that he can get the sun out of his eyes while he eats his bagel. I'm in awe. He slowly picks up his bagel, and for a moment, I'm terrified at the thought that his own genius may escape him, that he may never appreciate the epic brilliance of his laziness, since he's not going to wake up for another hour. But between his next bite, he pauses, looks at me, and gives me the faintest sly grin before returning to gnaw slowly on his zombie bagel. Johnson is here today, 15 years later, and he has constantly proved to be a crucial key in the success of this project. And now, with that being said, I, Salim Haider, named this vessel the Johnson-class destroyer, and may God bless him and all those he sails with. Thank you.
All right, Salim, thank you for that. The view into the parallel universe where we see Salim as a naval officer. So thank you. Okay, everyone, I have to say that was incredible. I can't thank you enough for joining us with this program, and also for sharing so much of what has been important to you. And I'm overwhelmed with the generosity that you've all shown. So thank you so much. And now we're going to go back to Salim, who's going to announce the winners of the gift cards. So Salim, take it away.